first derby. How are you feeling?
It is, yeah. I'm really excited. I think, that's what, certainly in the 8 years I've been in New South Wales and in Sydney, to see the game grow has been a phenomenal effort by the AFL and the two New South Wales teams. So I think, Derby 30, I think it is. So, really excited, and also about, our players having to respond.
James Rowbottom yesterday seemed a little bit fed up with injuries as an excuse. Is that a mantra across the whole club at the moment?
Yeah, it is. I think you saw last night in some games at Essendon, they have injuries, and a lot of sides do, and how you deal with them is the sign of a really strong club. We've got to make sure that we get back to the players that certainly do play. And my messages all the way along to the players have been that there's 23 that go out and represent this footy club. You do it in the manner and the way that we normally should, and at times we've let ourselves down in that area.
We've seen you guys be really competitive even in a lot of losses this season, but that second half against Gold Coast, was that the most disappointing you've been so far in some of the performances?
Yeah, it was. I think we had a meeting on Tuesday to address that, and to speak through that. And I think that's the only thing you can do is to identify the standards at which you want to play and set, and we fell really short of that. So to fluctuate in and out of games, but the way that happened was really disappointing. So we get a chance now on Sunday to make amends for that.
Obviously the Suns are a really good contest side, they've got a lot of good midfielders, so is that where it kind of stems for you, being a little bit more physical around the contest and trying to fix that this weekend?
That's also one of the giant strengths between wins and losses as well. So part of that, we were really good early and we let ourselves down especially in the second half. So one thing we want to make sure is that it wasn't just about their mids, it was the collective of their whole group that got on top, and we didn't stop it quick enough.
Dean, I wondered your take on the rivalry, because fans want to believe you don't like each other, and earlier in the week Toby Bedford said as much. Yesterday Himmelberg and Rowbottom kind of watered it down a little, but I wondered what your take on the rivalry is.
Yeah, I've been a part of some crosstown rivalries over my time, and I think the more you certainly understand the dynamic of football, we want to promote it in New South Wales, but we also don't want to lose against our team that are across the road. So that's one important thing, is to identify the difference between growth in New South Wales of AFL football and actually winning games against your local team. So I've always been strong on beating the local team.
Dean, do you need a bit more? Sorry, go on.
Since you've come in, it's a fair few rounds into the job now. What's been the biggest challenge for you when you look back throughout this season? Something that maybe has caught you a bit off guard coming into the head coach's role?
A lot gets thrown at you, and you're continually learning every day, whether it's with a player, whether it's staffing, whether it's you want to change something of the way you play, the training program, dealing with a lot of things, and that's just the nature of the job. So there's not one thing that sort of stood out. It's just been a number of things that are different to when you're an assistant, and you've just got to adapt, and that's what I ask my players to do, is to try and adapt to situations they're faced with, and I've got to do exactly the same. So I'm loving every minute of it, and through these tough times you find out a lot about everyone at the football club, and we're doing that now.
Do you need a bit more out of Will Hayward at the moment?
Yeah, I think certainly, and that's what I said to the players, is it's not the young ones or the players that are, the Riley Bice and the like, or Corey Warner or Caden Cleary, or these ones that are going to turn around the way we played. It's the middle tier of players that we need to perform at a level that they've played 80, 100, 150 games. So they know the standard, they know how to get in form, they know what playing at their best looks like. So there's a band of players that, in that area of the ground, or they're those experienced players that we need to play a bit more consistently. So they're aware of that, and you can't leave it all to too few.
He's been identified as a really strong role player for a while.
Yep.
When you're missing a Papley and your key forwards, does he need to alter that mindset a little bit and maybe take charge in the forward line a little bit more? Would you like to see a bit more of that?
Yeah, I think everything we say to our players is when, we want all players to lead, and everyone leads differently. And we understand the dynamic of when senior players aren't there, that someone has to fill that void. And when Tom's so vocal, we need Will, and we need Hayden McLean, and we need the like that play a little bit of footy. We need them to take control of their area. So that's one thing that we've mentioned to them. hopefully they do that this weekend.
Sam Wicks has been named after missing last week with that sort of calf issue. How
Yep.
kind of touch and go was he for last week, and was he always looking to get to this week, or was it pretty touch and go this week as well?
Yeah, well, the hard part with the Thursday night squad you have to name is before your main training session. So we need to make sure that obviously Sam and a few players can get through this session today. You can't bring them in after you've named them if they're not in the 26. So we've got to make sure that we did that. He was sort of never going to play last week, and Ball reports he's got along really well. He trained for our first session, but he's got to get through a full session tonight.
And another guy who's been included in that extended squad is Angus Sheldrick. Obviously had a really good week in the VFL last week. Is he someone that you'd like to see really step up and try and find a spot in that midfield for himself? Because clearly he's got the talent, he's a first round pick, we've seen what he can do, but we maybe just haven't quite seen that consistency yet at AFL level.
Yeah, and also there's metrics that we look at that aren't just numbers. That's one thing that, when we sat and watched a whole VFL game, that we look at a number of things for all of our players, and their role isn't just about only one sole thing. So, young players are aware of the way we want to play and what's required to do that, and Angus is one of them as well. So hopefully he gets his opportunity and he makes the most of it. But we want to coach our players the right way, all the way through, whether they're playing AFL or VFL.
In terms of the guys who are kind of on the fringes of returning, Millsy's probably the one where a lot of focus is. I think I saw it was sort of 1 to 2 weeks still. What's the sort of guideline that you think we might be seeing him back on the field for?
Hopefully sooner rather than later. The thing with Callum is, you just got to look at what's directly in front of you. And for him it's about trying to get back as quickly as he can, but also to get through today's session, reassess from when that looks. What does it look like on Sunday? What does it look like early next week? And hopefully that's the time frame. It's hard to give an exact time frame of it because it just depends on how he pulls up to how you monitor his program. So he trained fully on Tuesday. He'll do again today. A bit of a lighter one for a bigger one on the weekend.
Has his injury actually resolved, and it's more a point of getting the load in and
Yep.
building that load?
Yeah, spot on. Yep. So you just got to make sure that you actually do it. He spent a fair bit of time off legs, so we've got to get that timing right. So when he does come back, he's ready to go and he's AFL ready.
Dane Rampy's the one player who's managed to match up pretty well on Toby Green over the last few years. Is that the set matchup for the Giants captain?
It might be one of them. Sam played on him during the practice game we played out here. Toby's also been spending a fair bit of time up the ground, whether it's an extra around the stoppage or also playing as a midfielder as well. So we know how damaging he is. He's a phenomenal footballer, but we've got to make sure he's a part of it, but that forward line is a very dangerous looking forward line as well.
Being across this body of games, obviously coming off 3 defeats, what are some of the things that you've actually been impressed with this side that you're looking, this could be building into something great?
I think certainly the way we sort of played a front half game, particularly Port Adelaide late, early against Gold Coast. To be able to take that away from Gold Coast, which was a massive strength of theirs, they're the number one front half team, and to dominate that in the first part with our contest work, probably Port Adelaide improved and it was okay against Gold Coast, but just not for long enough. So we've got to make sure that we get that right, but also the way we defend. We've got to make sure that we're really strong on the metrics where the ability for them to move the ball becomes as hard as possible. So that's what we're focusing on.
How much do you take stock of the way the Giants attack? Obviously, the two lockies at the back there on half-back are really key for them. Excuse me. James Jordan might be going to Lockie Whipple. We've seen that matchup before. But do you feel like if you can get on top of those two guys that you can have a little bit more control of the way the game is played?
Yeah, I think one thing they do is, they're the number 1 or 2 switch team and corridor team as well from their defensive half. So, that's something we've got to be aware of. And those two provide massive run through that part. But also their mids, Finn Callahan, and they get back to support to generate ball to allow them to go with that high transition speed. So we've got to make sure that, we quell where we enter inside 50 is really important for their the way that they can counter. But on top of that as well, we just got to be wary of their runners and what they can do because, both of those players have been really important for them.
Just on Logan McDonald, I think he's seeing another specialist this week or he's seen one to really try and get a gauge of where he's at. I mean, what are you expecting in terms of that injury? It's clearly a serious one.
Yep.
Should it be a long-term one? Is it something that you could also be looking to potentially replace in a sort of mid-season draft, that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk through in the next week or two about, first of all about Logan and what it looks like for him from the best recovery point or the best chance for him to get back as fit as possible, as soon as possible. Obviously, it's not going to be in the short term. That's one thing we know. The extent of that and how long, we still don't know. So we need to make sure everything's right for Logan and the footy club. And once that gets decided, then we can work out what we do from there.
Mark's last one.
Aaron Francis is obviously getting the start at Hatford. Have you been surprised at how well he has done up there when he's been given the chance?
No, I wouldn't say completely surprised. I think the thing with Aaron is he come back as fit as he's ever been at the start of pre-season. Every week when he wasn't included in the 23, he would come to me and say, what do I need to do? Which is really admirable for a player to come when they're not playing, how can I get in? And whether it's sub, he goes, can I just be a sub as well? So, from there, he went back to VFL, he performed really well wherever he was playing. So he was really important for us, certainly ahead of the ball it's not about goals all the time, but once he took the ball, he slowed the game down, he can assess what's happening ahead of the ball, and, we moved him late, where he had a real impact as well. So, he's been important for us, for a player that's sort of been in now the team.